Thank you, Mitchell. Now we are going to speak with Jessica.
All right, who's ready to fire Tom McClintock? Yes. I'm Jessica Morse. I'm a fifth-generation Northern Californian. My great-great-grandparents crossed the Sierras in covered wagons, and unlike the Donner Party, they actually made it. And they landed in Gold Run outside of Auburn, and we still have the original homestead forest land to this day. My great-great-grandmother manned the telegraph booth at Donner Pass at the turn of the century, keeping the trains running on time, and I even have a gold mine that great-grandpa Harmon won in a poker bet. So I love our community. I grew up just down the road in Carmichael, graduate of Mira Loma High School, and got an alum, and I learned early on a dedication to service. You know, I spent a lot of time with my grandma. She would take us on special trips up to Apple Hill where I could get a pie the size of my head. And I also spent my weekends, I was working at a nursing home as my first job in high school. And talking to our seniors, learning to engage with them, and really learning the point people and seeing the variety of experiences people have when they age and retire. And I learned early on how important it is for our seniors to be able to retire with dignity. And for our community that they've given so much to, for us to be able to give back to our seniors, and for our seniors to be able to draw on the investments that they've earned and worked for and put into when they're ready for them. So it was very natural for me, having grown up with a life of service, that my mother really instilled in me for me to dedicate my life to public service. I spent about 10 years traveling all over the world, working for the State Department, the Defense Department, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. It included a year and a half on the ground in Iraq, standing side by side with our troops at the height of the war. And I saw firsthand as a civilian what our veterans go through. And my career was really dedicated to trying to prevent conflict all around the globe. But this last year I realized that the conflict was at home. And I stopped everything in my life to come home and serve, because that's the way my mother trained me. And we stepped up, and the issues in our community, even though this is a historically red district, and I'll give you a hint, I actually come from a very Republican family in this district. Got about 130 relatives, all of whom I flipped. And it's because the issues we face in our community, they're not partisan. You know, no one asks you if you're Republican or Democrat if you're stuck at the intersection of Highway 65 and 80 for 30 minutes every single day. You know, and nobody asks you if you're Republican or Democrat if you feel like your Social Security is at risk, if you feel like your health care is at risk, if you're paying too much for prescription drugs. These are issues that impact all of us. You know, I watched my grandmother rely on Social Security like so many of our seniors. You know, so many of our seniors depend on their Social Security for half to 90% of their income. For my grandma, she received widow's insurance and then later disability insurance. And it allowed her to age with grace and dignity. And when she was unable to drive, our transit system in the region was so bad that she couldn't live at home anymore. And we had to move her into a retirement facility. And we found a lovely assisted living community that we could visit her in often, and she actually really enjoyed it. But it was because she had her Social Security, because she had her Medicare, and because she was in a financial position where she still owned her home, that we were able to sell her home to be able to pay for this. But a lot of seniors don't have that advantage, and therefore are completely dependent on Social Security to keep us moving forward. So when I'm in Congress, there are 3 things I am going to do to support our seniors. The first is to protect Social Security, because everybody has invested in this program and deserves to be able to get the return on their wages when they retire. Second, we need to expand and protect Medicare. And third, we need to build infrastructures and a community that allows our seniors to age in place and age with dignity. So the first issue, Social Security. We need to make sure that it continues to be solvent. our trust fund for Social Security, there's this myth that it's taking money out of our national debt, right? It's not. Our Social Security is coming out of the wages from our workers and the trust fund, which is currently around $2.8 trillion. Now, right now, we have all of our amazing baby boomers retiring. Give yourselves a hand. Congratulations. And we've been knowing that you were going to retire for the last 50 years. It's not a surprise that we have this huge bulge in our population in the retirement age right now. We've seen it coming. Now, that creates a little bit of a gap in our Social Security trust fund, and we need to address it. You know who I'm frustrated with, though? It's folks like McClintock who have been in politics for the last 40 years and have done nothing to try to address this problem and have actually exacerbated by trying to borrow from the Social Security Trust Fund. He is harming your security and wages, and that is not good enough for us. So I think the first step is to remove the cap on income. We should have everybody paying into Social Security at 6%, even if you're earning more than $120,000. That would cover most of that gap and make Social Security solvent for another several decades, which is essential. Second, we need to make sure that the benefits make sense for the communities we're living in. The cost of living adjustments that you guys are asking about, we need to make sure that they are reflected and calculated with the cost of living here, because as we know, your cost of living in San Francisco versus Roseville versus Yosemite are very different, and extremely different from the cost of living in Kentucky. And when you go to resell your home, you may not be able to downgrade and afford a smaller home in your community and may have to leave your community. So we have to move those cost of living adjustments so they make sense for our seniors living here. We also have to lift the hiring freeze on federal agencies, including the Social Security Administration. Social Security Administration has about 98% of our Social Security costs go directly into checks to our earners. There is very little administrative overhead. It is a very efficient system. So to have a hiring freeze on that and to be trying to harm the Social Security Administration is ridiculous, and it's not a good. Doesn't even give us cost savings. So we need to make sure that it's able to deliver the services effectively as it has done in the past. We need to also protect Medicare. It's essential. Our nation needs to get to universal health care. Full stop. I mean, how many of you guys like me are excited about California's proposal for Medicare for all, right? And in order for that to function, in order for us to fulfill that dream, we need to first be able to negotiate drug prices within Medicare. We can't pay these exorbitant private sector prices, pay $400 for a pill that costs $100 to make. We need to be able to negotiate these prices to start making Medicare affordable in the long run so that we can pay for it. And finally, we can't have gaps in coverage. It's really essential, whether it's your eyesight or living at home, we need to make sure that Medicare covers all of our healthcare needs. It's not a pick and choose, because you don't get to pick and choose what health challenges arise in your life. Finally, we need to design our communities so seniors can age in place. A big part of that is transit, so that when our seniors retire, there are public transit options so that if they cannot drive, they can get around their communities effectively. We also, and this actually addresses one of the earlier questions, which is we need to make our infrastructure accessibility compliant, because we don't want people who are forced onto Social Security disability insurance because they can't get jobs, because they can't get to work. Right? If these are infrastructure and engineering problems, we can solve them. The people who are depending on disability because they cannot work, absolutely, let's take care of them. We need to protect that program. The people who are struggling because they can't physically get into work, that's an engineering problem that our society needs to address, and it's a human rights issue, frankly. So to make all of these changes, the best thing we can do is vote McClintock out and vote me in. And there is a model for doing this here. It's not an uphill climb. We are all in this together. First, we have a grassroots base that is excited. We had people out canvassing and knocking on doors, having face-to-face conversations in 10 counties last weekend. Second, we have have the resources to get McClintock out. I out-fundraised him both quarters in a row, ended up with more cash on hand than he has, and I'm proud to have earned not only the endorsement of the California State Democratic Party, but the endorsements of most of the local clubs in the region. It is a huge grassroots base. People are excited, and they are excited because we have a message that is reaching across the partisan divide. We have a message that is reaching to our community at a community level, and it's a message that's going to win. So I will be honored to have your support, to have you join us, and I will be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
Jessica, there was a couple of questions I'd like you to readdress, if you will. That is 2D, E, and F. Just offer some clarity on those questions.
1DE.
1D, E, and F.
Sure.
Okay, okay.
Do y'all have your bingo cards? Okay. Yes, absolutely. We need to strengthen base grants and reform COLA so that it makes sense for everybody. So yes. Will we support increased funding for, we talked about Social Security Administration and how that needs to have more funding, and the staff really is what we're funding it for. And then finally, absolutely, windfall exemption needs to disappear, because when you put money in, you should take it out. The only exemption I would actually make is for Tom McClintock. I don't think he should get it, because he's already drawing on his state pension from our tax dollars, also getting a federal salary at the same time. If that man starts drawing on our Social Security, I think we should all be pretty pissed. Pardon my language, my goodness, my father's here. But yes, I think I am a strong supporter of Social Security. We need to defend it. We need to have reforms that make sense, that are sustainable, and that reflect the dignity and the hard work of everybody that's put into it already. Thank you.